this video, I want to talk to you about sidechain compression. Now, if you're not familiar with compression itself and exactly the effect that that's having on your sound, I'd strongly recommend you check out the previous video in this series when I talk specifically about compressors and about how they affect your sound. So what exactly is sidechain compression? Well, it's simply a means of taking a trigger instrument to trigger a compressor on a destination instrument. So for example, say you have a pad sound, as we have in this example here in Ableton, and you want to trigger the compressor using something other than the source sound of the pad, then you would use sidechain compression to do that. And what are the uses for this technique? Because we speak a lot in this course about how to get really clear on the role and function of your parts. So that's a big question to ask yourself: is, do I need this technique? Is it going to serve me in some way? Is it going to benefit my mix? Is it going to be useful for my sound to have this effect applied to it? So why do we use it? What are the uses for it? Well, generally speaking, we use sidechain compression to create more space in the mix for certain elements to actually have their kind of space. So it's a means of adding to kind of separation. It's a means to allowing things like kick drums, for example, to punch through your mix. It's also used very effectively on effects returns, just to make sure that your effects aren't swamping your mix and effectively lowering the amount of dry signal that you have in proportion to the wet signal within your mix. Let's just have a listen to this example that I've pulled up here. So I have a lovely lush pad sound and I want to apply a sidechain to it. So what I want to do is I want to use this kick drum sample that you can see below here. I want to use this as our trigger sound and the pad sound as the destination sound. So I'm going to put a compressor on our pad sound. Now, for the purposes of this demo, we don't need to be actually hearing the kick sound. So you can turn that off by just clicking on the channel number here. That doesn't mean to say that the sound itself won't be active. It simply won't be audible to you. But what it will do is we are able to then route it as our trigger sample to our compressor. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, often when you open up the compressor, it may just look like this. So you may not see any means of adding a sidechain routing. If you just click on this little downwards facing triangle, it opens up a secondary dialog here that includes your sidechain capacity. In order to add a sidechain, it couldn't be easier than it is in Ableton. You simply click on sidechain and then you choose your audio source. And in our case, we're choosing the sidechain kick. Now, what we've done in doing that is we've taken our sidechain kick on channel 2 and we're basically routing it into the compressor so that each time the kick drum hits, that's going to be basically what is triggering our compressor. So the compressor is being used in a different way than a standard compressor, which would be triggered by content that is, contained within your destination sound or your source sound here. So now if we put our threshold up and then slowly bring it down, you'll hear that kick drum actually hitting the threshold and then starting to affect our synthesizer sound or our pad sound. Let's put the ratio up so you can hear this really clearly. Now you can see from the yellow line here that more and more effects being added here, more sidechain. So effectively, each time this kick drum is hitting, it's now ducking, it's automatically controlling the volume of our pad sound. Now if I bring the kick in so you can actually hear it, let's just check we should have a limiter just on at the end here so we don't go over, and we can turn that down a touch as well. It's going to be too loud. Okay. Now what's really cool about this technique is you could use any sound whatsoever as your sidechain source. For example, you could have a sidechain on a reverb that is being applied to your vocals. But you could send as the sidechain source here, rather than sending a kick drum, you could actually send the dry signal of the vocal. So what that would do is whenever the vocal's actually singing or saying its part, the reverb would be ducked down. And what that can do is that can actually allow for a lot more space for your vocals dry, like your vocals dry signal will really punch through the mix better than being constantly swamped by this sort of reverb sound. In the same way, if you had like a big reverb applied to this pad sound, by adding a sidechain kick to the pad sound, to the pad sound's reverb, sorry, you could again just clear some space for the drier part of the pad to cut through the mix. So there are all kinds of different ways that we can use sidechain. Now it doesn't have to be used as radically as this by any means. As you can see, you could use it at a level where it's barely perceptible, but you're still enjoying some of the benefits of ducking the volume. And what that will do very subtly is it'll allow your kick drum or whichever elements you're looking to have, you know, some sort of designated space within the mix to punch through. It will allow them the space to do that. Now, if you think about replicating this quite subtly across your entire mix, then it can be a really, really powerful tool in just allowing that separation and clarity and space that you're looking for in your final mixdown. So in this video, I'm not going to go into any more detail on these, on the specific controls here, because I went into those in some detail in the previous tutorial on compression. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for today on this particular subject. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, then like and subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll find a whole bunch of similar content. And also check out my website at mixingmasteringmentoring.com, where you can find a whole range of mixing, mastering and mentoring services. You'll also find PDF downloads for free, which will really help you in turbocharging your learning. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you again soon.